It's a
Yeah, he's
female.
getting fed up with the.
No, I'm not getting fed up with it,
So,
but it's a female, and
I would
we
definitely
need a
switch.
token female on the show. There you are.
I hope I didn't bait you. I'm actually a trans.
Oh, so you're a trans woman. My token trans woman. What do you want to talk about? Trans stuff?
Well, I don't have too much to say, but I wanted to. I've listened to you for a long time, and I just popped in your stream today. I noticed you say a lot of jokes like triggering, safe spaces, things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think that that's how lefty people act in like regular lefty people, not like
No.
I don't know, like YouTube roasted by Ben Shapiro?
No, I'd say it's probably 15% of lefties
Okay.
act like yeah.
I was just curious about that. Because I live in Seattle, like the most lefty place. And yeah, I don't know. Like, there's definitely a lot of tribalism when it comes to certain political topics, but I feel like the sort of caricatures that you'd get from
from TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely feels a lot less like that.
But the thing is,
Yeah.
the TikTokers and the 15% that I'm kind of teasing, they're the most vocal, right? And they're the most fun to make fun of. Now, you said you've been listening to my channel for a while?
Yeah, I used to listen to you it's got maybe 3-4 years ago. Maybe less than that, when I was actually I almost said detransitioning, deconstructing from religion.
Okay, I got a ton of questions for you if you're willing to answer them.
For sure, yeah.
Do you tend to agree with me or disagree with me on my stance on trans issues like sports and women's spaces and that sort of thing, and transitioning, surgery?
So I haven't heard of much of what you said. I kind of I listened to you a lot when most of what you talked about was religion. And then once I got more stable in my beliefs, I kind of didn't listen to you as much. And then when I started seeing your videos recently, it seems like you're talking a lot more about religion. I mean, a lot more about politics.
Yeah, I'm started getting bored of religion because I think in the United States, the scale's already been tipped. Like, I think Christianity is basically dying. It will never die completely, but so yeah. And I found myself repeating myself with people, so it's not as fun anymore.
Yeah.
But on the trans issues, what I've always said, and I've tried to be consistent on this, is I really don't care what people do when they're over 18 as adults. Mm-hmm. But under 18, I'm against all surgeries, puberty blockers. I think it behooves people to wait till their prefrontal cortex is fully developed before they make any potentially lifelong decisions. And then when it comes to women's spaces, I just say blanket, if you're a trans woman, you should not compete in women's sports, full stop. And if that makes some people sad, so be it. Women's bathrooms is a little tougher, but women's change rooms, I think that biological men should not be in women's change rooms. Now, again, is that after transitioning, am I more malleable on that? Yes, I would say. What other issues do I talk about? Those are the main ones. So my main thing is to protect kids. And I see people who call themselves or view themselves as very compassionate, actually potentially causing harm to children, because I am a firm believer that kids are crazy, stupid, and don't know what's best for them.
You remind me of my dad a lot. No, I have disagreements about most of some disagreement about most of those topics, but I wouldn't say I'm 100% on the other side. Like, I don't think, I don't know if you saw that new, there's like a Daily Wire movie that they're putting out
Oh,
making
the
fun of,
Lady Ballers.
yeah.
Yeah, I watched it. I didn't like it.
It seems silly, but,
Yeah, it was too silly.
but I think sports, you got to be careful. I don't think like anyone who identifies as a woman, for example, should be able to just be in women's sports. I don't think that's super controversial. It
Yeah,
seems
it
like
isn't.
most okay.
Like
But I don't think
69% of the United States, like they've done polling on it, take the stance I take.
yeah. When it comes to transitioning kids, I understand the concerns. Like it is tough. I think the one thing I would have you consider is the younger you do these things, the more of a normal life you can have in a lot of cases. I don't know if you've heard of that actress, Kim Petras. Is that her name? Or am I thinking of someone else? She's in, I think Euphoria is the show. She's a trans woman actress or actor.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
don't know.
familiar.
But anyway, you know, looking at her, you would never guess she's trans, because she transitioned when she was like 7 or something. I think she's German or something. And I get like transitioning at 7. That's scary if your kid's just like, oh, I want to transition. Because
Well,
kids are
like
very.
I'm glad you called in because I have some questions about,
Mhm.
like you mentioned this Kim Petras person, age 7. Like, what does it even mean? Like, to say that, do you think Kim Petras says that she or
Was that the
he?
right person, by the way? Did you Google it?
I Googled it, but I'm not sure. I'll show you a picture. You tell me if it's the right person.
I don't even know if I would recognize her.
Like,
Um,
do you say that you think you're born in the wrong body?
so I think my opinions probably aren't the majority. If you've ever heard of, there's a YouTuber called ContraPoints
Yeah, I
who's a
know
trans.
that person.
I'm probably the most aligned with her views. I mean, maybe going along with the whole religious deconstruction thing. I'm very skeptical of like anything that's like, oh, deep down on my inside, I'm this. At least in terms of like metaphysical realities, like I don't think there's like a woman's soul or a male soul. Um,
Okay, well, this is very interesting because I agree with you. I'm a naturalist, so I don't really think it's even
I
possible to be
figured,
born in the
yeah.
wrong body. So, what does it really mean for you when you were born male, right? And do you still
Hmm.
say you're male?
I mean, it doesn't come up, but
Well, I'll
I
ask
guess
you,
I
are you male?
I wouldn't. Yeah. I would say the only caveat is that at least as of very recently, I'm on hormones, and that changes your physiology in really measurable ways. So things do get a little complicated in terms of like, like I know a lot of anti-trans advocates will say like, oh, you're always a male, chromosomes and stuff, but I think there's more to it because the hormone balance in our body
But
determines a lot of the,
but before you went
I
on
guess.
hormones, like what is your experience that you had that made you think that you were different in some way?
Oh, so it's mostly gender dysphoria, so negative. I would say more negative experiences than like a positive longing for something else. Like my old name was a very masculine name. My whole life I had this like discomfort with it. Um, that kind of got worse as I got older, but it's just a sort of like dissonance between sort of the experience that other boys had and as I went through puberty and stuff like men had, that I just felt like
Like, can you be more specific? Like, I know this is personal stuff, and you don't have to answer,
No, it's fine.
but what exactly did you experience? Like, you mentioned your name. Like, what about your name made you uncomfortable, or
Yeah. I mean, it's I guess the gender association. I mean, just to be, I mean, the most obvious thing. It would just be kind of this visceral. I don't know if that's the word. Just this feeling of like I'm in a group setting. I'm hanging out with friends, having a good time, and then somebody says my name, and I just feel bad.
but
And
you
it
don't know
was.
why you felt bad?
I mean, I would say it's because my name made me feel very male or very um, masculine, I guess, and I didn't like that.
Okay, like you said, you've watched a lot of my religious stuff, and I
Hmm.
I will ask religious people outsider test for faith type questions, and I'll ask them why do they believe God exists, and they will give me answers, and then we'll explore it. What? How did you come to have this belief that you were female or a woman?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even go as far as to like um, what's not pathologize, but like say like, oh, I discovered I'm really a woman. Um, that makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't know. At least for me, it's more. I realized that there is a different way I wanted to express myself, and when I started to explore and move towards a more feminine um, expression,
Okay,
those things make me feel happier.
okay. I like that answer. Now, and again, I'm going to treat you the same way I treat religious people when I ask these questions. So, there are feminine males out there, men, who don't feel the need to transition. They're just feminine males,
Hmm.
whatever that means. And even that is, very subjective and nebulous.
Very subjective and nebulous. Yeah.
Why do you think you are a male who had these desired femininity and wanted to transition versus like what makes you different than that male who's feminine who doesn't want to transition?
Hmm. I feel like a lot of things kind of get lumped together here, like desiring to transition. Like I wanted to change my name because my name made me uncomfortable, and I was happier when I had a more gender neutral or more feminine name. Um, I wanted to start wearing more
Are you
feminine
getting wet,
clothing.
by the way? Is it raining?
It's drizzling a little bit,
Oh, okay.
but I just don't want to bother my roommates. I'm okay.
Okay.
My dog's out here too. Say hi.
Yeah, you were just explaining why, like, what makes you different from that male who says, I'm a feminine male and I'm okay with that. What do you think is the difference between you and that person?
Um, I mean, a lot of this is just so semantic. Like, I'm not different in a lot of ways. But I guess in terms of the identity that I choose to take on, like we have the way I see it, like we have these socially prescribed roles in society. Um, I mean, you could say gender is just descriptive, but there's a lot of ways in which we have like men and women, and we separate these and we assign a lot of social value to them. Um, and I guess being a trans person would be deciding, okay, I want to sit in this camp instead of this camp. Um, so for me personally, like I have social groups where I change my pronouns, and I'm like, I want to be referred in this way.
When you say camps, you mean like women and men camps,
Yeah, yeah,
not necessarily feminine and masculine.
yeah. Like there's a lot of gay men out there that like there's this guy James Charles that does makeup on YouTube. You know, acts stereotypically feminine, but he would never say that he's trans.
Right.
I think there's a
Yeah.
lot
So
of overlap
yeah,
there, but
that's what was his name?
James Charles.
James. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to explore right now. What makes you different than James?
Um, I mean, I think there's a different goal. Like, I want to, like, if I could press a button and just be a woman, I think I would. Like, um, I don't think someone like James Charles would want to.
And do you have a reason why you would press that button?
Um, I mean, I don't know if there's one reason, but it's
Because it can't be the femininity portion, because you mentioned James, who's very feminine. Like, so if you said, I push that button because I want to be feminine, well, you can be feminine as a male. So,
well, I guess like the difference between like, let's say a really feminine man and like, let's say like a regular woman, quote unquote. It's, I mean, it's mostly societal perception, right? Like a woman can go to a 7-Eleven in the middle of suburban Washington, like, you know, rural Washington, and be mostly comfortable. But like some really femme gay guy is going to be scared. So there's definitely that kind of part of it, like wanting to be
oh,
perceived a certain way.
that's interesting. I never thought about that. So you're saying that it is safer to be a feminine woman than a feminine man because you could beat up more as a feminine man.
Yeah, I mean that's I think that's probably obviously true. Um, and you know this is interesting because so like I live in Seattle, that's very hyper progressive. I know a lot of trans people, um, and there's a big thing with like hormones and voice training and stuff like that, where like traditionally a trans person will do everything they can to like what you call pass. Um, but I know like a lot of trans people now, it's kind of this newer, maybe a newer wave of like trans activism, or not activism, but just like trans people and how they act. A lot of trans people I know don't try to really pass at all. Like they,
Yeah.
um,
I've seen them. Yeah, like there's on TikTok.
oh, okay. I'm not on TikTok.
Yeah.
You're more Gen Z than me, Doug.
Well, yeah, I had some people tell me I should need to get on TikTok because there's a lot of stupid Christians on there.
Oh, got it.
But this is all fascinating to me because I really don't like when someone says I feel like I'm a woman and they're a male. I want to know what that really means to feel like a woman. And it's tough because if you say bring up words like femininity, like what does that even mean? Does that mean playing with dolls, wearing pink, wearing makeup? Like you can do all those things as a male and still not be trans. And so I'm left wondering, what does trans even mean?
Yeah, you're really getting into it, Doug. um, there's some ContraPoints video out there that where like she kind of goes through, because she does this role playing thing where she has these different characters, um, and I remember this one video where she really got into that, and it's like I don't know, like I wonder if like you're overthinking this a little bit, like at the end of the day, I identify as trans because I'm happier when my friends call me she instead of he, you know. Like it's kind of it makes me feel safer and more comfortable in my skin to like feel like I can wear a dress and people won't be surprised. And that, like, I mean, the hormones thing is a whole different thing. Like my body will change and is changing, which I'm sure you have questions about, like, why do that if this is all, like, you know, it's complicated, but I think sometimes we can kind of overthink it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like I'm all for, if people want to wear dresses as a male, go for it. But for you, you mentioned the word safety a few times, and for you to be fully transitioned, you feel safer wearing a dress. Yes?
Well, not that I would feel safer wearing a certain thing, but I feel safer being, I guess, categorized in a way where I feel like this is sort of expected. Like, okay, Riley's gonna, Riley is a trans girl, so Riley might wear makeup, or, like, I'm just saying that in some ways, like, the label can be helpful.
Does your,
Um,
I'm going to get personal here, and you don't have to answer any of these questions if you don't want to, and
okay.
that's totally fine. But in terms of your sexuality, are you attracted to males or females?
Um,
Or
it's
neither?
changed. So I was sort of bisexual before, but probably more so attracted to women. Um, when I went on hormones, that actually sort of changed my sexuality a bit. I have a boyfriend now, which is very new to me. um,
A male?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Um, I'm still figuring things out. I was in a very long relationship. Not to get into this, but, like, since high school, so um, I'm definitely still figuring things out.
Okay. Well, yeah. And may I ask how old you, did you say how
I'm
old you?
24.
You're 24. Okay. And when did you start this process of, let's say, even social transitioning?
Um, I remember telling my partner about it maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But there's been some forms of gender dysphoria since, I guess, puberty or
Yeah.
a while back.
See, like my theory is, this process of, like you said, figuring things out continues, especially up to age 28 when your brain is fully developed. And I just can't imagine a kid who's 13, 14, 15 years old making these types of major decisions when it comes to puberty blockers or, any type of drugs, and definitely surgery, when they're still figuring things out. Do you agree with me that it's best to wait?
I wouldn't say I agree it's best to wait. I would say I agree that it's very scary, and something that should be thought about really carefully. I think the only thing I would say is, or the only like thing to push back would be that most people who transition don't regret it. Um, a lot of people regret not transitioning earlier. Um, so there's definitely, like if your kid thinks they're trans, like, there's things to worry about whether or not you let them transition. Like, if
Have you heard of these DCIS studies? Like,
are these, like, people that, like, stop, like, detransition or something like that?
well, that people who say they have dysphoria and then it desists, it goes away on its own with, like, basically just with verbal counseling, or very little counseling. It's just they work through the process of figuring things out, as you put it. And like, I've seen these studies, and you remind me of them when you said most people don't regret transitioning. But I think we have some hard data out there that says that if, let's say a kid at 12 years old says they have dysphoria, by the time they're your age, it's gone. And it's like, especially with boys, it's as high as, I think, 80%. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I'd have to look into that. Yeah. Well, okay, how about this? Like, what do you think of this? If we consider the gender you're born with as sort of a randomly chosen thing, and someone might transition, and then let's say they're either happy or they regret it, or they won't transition, and they'll either be happy or not. Like, why do you? What's the assumption that like it's better to be safe? Like, it's the more safe thing to not transition, as opposed to this gender that you started with isn't really something that was chosen by you anyway. So like it seems like a gamble either way, I guess. Like if there's someone with dysphoria who thinks they might want to transition, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I really don't see it as a gamble both ways if we're talking about the serious stuff like puberty blockers and surgery. I think safe better than sorry is far better.
But
Uh,
if they have gender dysphoria, like is it really safe? Like like
oh
for them
yeah,
to grow up and have body parts that make them uncomfortable and like
this is
hormones that
yeah, great question, Riley, because this is a main fundamental difference between me and I think a lot of other people who disagree with me on this topic, and that is my view on mental anguish is different than most people. I'm okay with a little bit of mental anguish
but like
because
what's the issue with like you're saying, oh, we don't want them to have like these hormones and surgeries if they're not really trans, I guess. Like what's the what's the damage there? And how is that different than the damage of not transitioning?
yeah, the damage with let's say most, well, I shouldn't say most, but a huge percentage of, from what I've read, people who go on puberty blockers then go on to the what do you call hormone replacement therapy. And if you do that for more than 2 or 3 years, you basically become sterile in over 90% of the cases. You no longer can have kids.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
Yeah. You agree?
I would agree with that. That's a big thing.
Yeah. So
I
that's a
would
huge risk.
sometimes I think like if these anti-trans advocates really care about trans people, they should be advocating for free um fertility treatment or
IVF,
like getting the no like
sperm bank.
if they're worried that all these males are transitioning to females and becoming infertile, they should be like the first people to advocate for having your semen stored before you transition and having that like free or paid for by like I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I tend to lean capitalist, so I'm not for
Sure.
free healthcare. So, no, it's not a healthcare is not a right in this country, especially specific procedures, and I don't see it becoming a right anytime soon. But yeah, if you are a male and you know you're going to become sterile and you want kids someday, yeah, freeze your sperm. Did you do
Yeah,
that?
and I did. Yeah. I don't think I'm like 90% sure I don't want my own kids. My parents did adoption for some of their kids, not me, but that's something I've always been interested in. And I don't think I'm going to end up with a woman. So, um, but what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I should mention that I don't know how true this is, but I have heard that in a lot of cases, if you stop the treatment, you do get your fertility back. It's just kind of not something that's been studied. But I wouldn't like hang my hat on that or anything.
Yeah. So given that's a serious risk, not to mention any type of surgery. If we're talking surgeries, there's inherent risks with that with all surgeries.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but most trans women don't get bottom surgery.
Yeah,
Like,
I can believe that because that's pretty serious.
yeah,
Um,
I looked it up because my brother asked me about it, and I was like, I don't know anyone who's done that. I know I have one friend who's considering it or planning to do it. Um, but I don't think this is something where like we could have like this epidemic of like 20-year-olds who detransition and they don't have their junk anymore. But I get what you're saying. Like these are serious things that can affect people in real ways.
Yeah. Have you been suicidal?
No, I've never really been suicidal. I would say my experience has been somewhat mild compared to, I would say, a lot of other people. It was more like I had all those feelings, but never strong enough where I'm like, I'm gonna kill myself if I don't transition or anything like that.
Like one big issue for me is I'm really against this type of emotional manipulation. Like I'm a pretty stoic type of guy. And I've actually heard people say, would you rather have a live daughter or a dead son? And I'm really against that type of emotional manipulation. Do you agree with me on that? That that's bad to threaten parents that, hey, your child might die unless you do this?
Yeah, I think that's probably not the best way to approach it. Yeah, like I mean, just in like a rational sense, like, um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get what you mean that it feels a bit manipulative. Like, oh, if we don't do this, we're gonna kill ourselves. Like, but I think the important point is that like there are lots of people who are being affected by these things in real ways, and at least in my opinion, like greater social acceptance of trans people is a good thing and will help people be less depressed.
Yeah, see, that's a tough one for me because um, I've never, ever in my life been anxious. Well, maybe once or twice, but like I've never suffered from any type of anxiety or depression. I cannot relate to that. I
Yeah.
understand intellectually that's people do, but for me, it's like life is hard. Like if you trans or not, gay or not, black or not, I mean, life is tough. And
Yeah, but like, what's the point of saying that? Like,
the point of
I
saying
mean, I
that
like,
is that you can actually get better at dealing with mental anguish when you adjust your expectations. So, for example, um, you said feeling safer wearing a dress. Um, you should wear a dress and expect to be punched. And when you're not, you're happy. You
but
know what
it's
I'm
like
saying?
that. It's
That's
better
an
to have a
extreme case,
society
but
where, but isn't it like I live in Seattle. I have a lot of friends that are very accepting, and genuinely like me, and I'd rather live here than in like Alabama where I might
yeah,
be punched.
I understand. And you're a very likable person.
Well, thank you.
I can just tell by your personality type. Like you're not like do you listen to the Line, the Transatlantic show?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay, good. But it's a show where they talk about trans issues, and I went on there one time, and I tell you, these trans people are very unlikable. I mean, uh, if I were a trans person, I would say, "Shut up! You're doing the trans movement a disservice." And I would say, "Listen
Yeah,
to Riley
I mean,
instead."
I think that's more of an issue with the sort of population that calls into these types of shows. Most of the trans people I know are like busy making silly hyper pop music with their friends. Like um, I think like most trans people I know aren't anything like the purple hair SJW. I mean, I have purple hair, but um, you know,
Got to fit those stereotypes.
yeah, purple hair and pronouns.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to ask you. I'm still confused a bit about what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man, because if you define it based on these stereotypical rules, then it it becomes this thing that, like, I understand the feminist viewpoint. Like, feminism was all about breaking the stereotypes, but the trans issue is like, no, bring back the stereotypes, because how else do we know I'm a woman or I'm a man? You see what I'm saying? It's very
Yeah,
bizarre to me.
I see where that comes from. I sort of feel like it's a misunderstanding in some way. I'm not sure if I can characterize it like, um, I just know like personally, the trans people that I know seem to be the first to like push back against those like gender expectations. It's like, I understand that like the identity and the labeling stuff can be kind of, I don't know, feel a little weird and arbitrary, and like, okay, are you just upholding gender stereotypes? Um,
Like, somewhere in your history, you learned, and I did too, that women wear dresses and men wear suits, right? It's not in our DNA,
yeah,
it's not in our genes. So it's definitely a social construction.
yeah, but I think that like, I mean, this is maybe the most controversial thing I'll say, but I think in some ways, gender are is those stereotypes and those like sort of arbitrary social things. Like,
Okay. Yeah, and I agree with you, but then here's what my problem is. Why not just call yourself a man who likes to have his hair long, be called Riley, and wear dresses?
yeah, I've been asked that before. I think the way I see it is like, I don't think trans people should be expected to be like these martyrs for gender abolition or for like pushing the boundaries of gender. Like, I think it's sometimes overthinking it. Like, trans people just, they just want to be normal, but they just want to be normal in the other way, you know? Like, um,
Mm.
I, I think you can only do so much for like pushing the boundaries, where like, I think trans people do that, but it's more, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I'm more comfortable being in this bucket though. Like I like,
Yeah,
there's
I
some acknowledgement
understand.
like this is all.
But what I've noticed in my conversation with you here is that you will often appeal to what other people think about you. And this is why I think maybe the trans issue is about personality types as well, and not and I don't know if that's nurture or nature, but like, I could never see myself as trans because I don't care what people think about me. So even if I wanted to wear a dress, I'd wear that dress. And if someone says, hey, you look like an idiot, I don't care what you think. But do you think that is prevalent in the trans community, that there's this desire to want to be accepted and loved, and that they tend to care about what other people think about them more?
I mean, sure, but I mean, who doesn't want to be accepted and loved? Like,
Me.
well, you're weird. You
Yeah,
need
I
to be
guess
out there.
so. I guess I need my own identity, but like, I care what my wife thinks about me and what my kids and my immediate family think about me, but strangers, no.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know, like, where's this idea coming from that like, if you identify in a certain way, it means that you care so much about what other people think of you.
Well, you mentioned it, like, and I think it was a good point you made. You mentioned safety. So it's more safe to be a woman wearing a dress than a man wearing a dress if you're walking down a street in small town Alabama, right?
Hmm.
So that's a form of caring what other people think about you for a good reason, like, so they don't beat you up. But if it's
Yeah.
more or less that people will, I don't know, accept you and just make you feel good, like, I'm not into that. I mean, I don't need to feel good from people saying stuff to me or smiling at me or even accepting me.
I don't think you transition for social acceptance. I mean, in a lot of obvious ways, like, you'll be way more socially accepted by not transitioning, right? Like, especially if you live somewhere where they're not super into trans people. Um,
Do you think your dysphoria is more nurture or nature?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Do you think the dysphoria that you have had, and you said it wasn't, extreme or that bad, but the dysphoria you have had in your life, do you think it's more caused by nurture or nature?
I don't know. I mean, I didn't grow up in Seattle, so the place I lived before, trans wasn't really a thing. My parents aren't super into it.
Are your parents conservative, liberal, progressive?
I think my dad's a lot like you, just like kind of the way that you seem to view politics and stuff. Definitely conservative. My mom,
But if your dad's like me, he would still love you greatly. Does your dad love
yeah,
you? Okay,
yeah. He doesn't say it, but he does.
that's good.
Yeah, this is actually a good practice for. I'm visiting my parents in a couple weeks for Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If you want to practice on me on what you want to say to your dad and how he might react, yeah, go ahead.
I'm not planning to say anything. But I feel like this is the sort of conversations that I'll probably end up having with my parents.
Yeah. Well, have they seen you lately?
Yeah, like FaceTime. Like they know I changed my name. I have like they know like generally that like I'm presenting myself differently than I have in the past. But yeah, not to get too much into that. I'm not really worried. I know my parents love me. They're good people. So
Good.
yeah.
Okay. Well, you've been on here a while, and I've been kind of grilling you with all these questions. But I do appreciate you coming on and talking to me about this sort of thing. Was there anything else you want to talk about that's not trans related?
No, I mean, all I really had was I was curious about like all like the safe spaces triggering jokes. Like, if you feel like this is like what leftist people are, or not leftist, but like lefty people are like in general. But
No,
I don't know.
I'm totally fully aware that not all people are like the people I make fun of or watch on YouTube. Like I have a poker night where I'd say at least half, no more than half, lean left, maybe even call themselves progressive, and they're very like normal people. I am not this type of right leaning person who says all Democrats are evil and bad and stupid and crazy. And by the way, if you're left leaning and you view that the people on the right that way, you need to grow up and mature a little and learn about life. So yeah, but I do think there's about, I don't know, 10 to 15% of the far left progressive who are like the megas on the right. Like they're the equivalent of mega on the right.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, well thanks, Riley. All the
Yeah. Thanks
best
for
to
having me
you.
on. This was fun.
Yeah,
Have a
take
good
care.
one.